Okay, this will be the video part 2 for this figure 11-34, the swivel. And on the last video I showed how to add this image. Excuse me, having hiccups. On this video we're going to go through how to create a drawing using this part. And so not going to be too long. I want to just jump into how to create a drawing, and on this particular drawing we are going to add the dimensions that we see. I may not require you to show dimensions on every drawing, but going forward for a lot of these parts, just to get used to starting to add dimensions, I'm going to have you place them. So pay attention to where I'm clicking, what mouse clicks pop up in this area of my screen over this mouse cursor that's right here. And then also pay attention to the keys that I input. So for a lot of our dimensions, it's going to be D, then space, and that's going to look like that. And now I'm in my dimensions, but I'm not ready to do that because I'm not actually into any of my settings. So let's pause and go over settings. Let's see. Whatever. So I'm going to put ortho on. I may change that, but I like ortho mode over polar tracking. And then my object snaps are the following. Looks fine. If you haven't started to use perpendicular, please do so. It is to your benefit, but be careful and watch it, because sometimes perpendicular ends up lighting up right next to maybe a midpoint or something else that you actually want to hit, and instead it snaps to perpendicular. So not always the best. Just have to kind of watch to see that you're getting the correct symbol before you actually click. Okay, so to make a drawing of this part, at this point, once you've finished laying out the different views of the part, I do want to get rid of this 45-degree line and any other horizon lines. And instead of actually removing it, what we're going to do is throw it on a layer for viewports. So this viewport layer does not show up when printing. So we're just going to click that and then go change the layer. And so we'll be able to see it here, but when we go to print, it won't show up. Head over to layout 1 to find your part. So this entire time you should have been drawing in metric. If you weren't, that's okay. You can select everything, copy and paste it, and move it to a metric file. So just literally, if you need to do that, I'll show it very fast. The rest of you can skip forward about 30 seconds. What you would do is highlight everything, hit Control A, then hit Control C, then go to your start and jump into the template you need. So instead of inch, it would be metric. And then go to model and hit Control V and just place it in the positive quadrant. So this to the upper right of the origin, and then all your stuff will be placed. That image is not going to show right away. It's not, well, it might, but it also might have a problem finding it. So that's the only unfortunate thing. You may have to reload that if you are still using it. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the other drawing. All right, so no, we don't need this. So we're back here in layout 1. Let's add the information for this in a second, but just because I don't like to bounce back and forth between two screens, first we're going to double click in here, and the other option is to select the model or paper. So click the word paper to change it to model, or double click inside. You'll see it'll switch to model that way as well. And zoom out until you find your stuff, then zoom back in on the part. We're going to position that. Before I focus on the part, I'm just going to leave this here so I can type in the right stuff. So it is part number 11-34, and then the name, part name is Swivel. The rest of the information is you. So I'm going to double click here. I'll add those values. So part name, all capitals. Make sure you turn caps lock on. Swivel. And then just hit enter between things. We leave the revision alone. Scale for this we have not decided on. So I'll show you how to decide that in a second. The date today that I'm doing this is the 5th. But enter whatever date you complete this on. Put your name, first initial, last name. Oops. Forgot my last name. And then again, the number was just 11-34. Okay, we'll put the scale in a second. So to decide on scale, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see my whole paper. Double clicking back inside the window. And again, we're just going to center the part on the screen. And now I need to choose a scale that lets me focus on the entire drawing. So I will tell you the scale for these parts most often. If for some reason I forget, this is how you do it. And so we're going to check the scale. We'll just start with 2 to 3, see what happens. That was pretty close to perfect. If I wanted to move this down a little bit, this would screw up my alignment with my 45 line, my miter line, but it would allow me to fit everything maybe on page. I'm going to wait because I don't want the nose of this piece to be that close to this part, especially since we're going to add dimensions. Let's check another scale. 1 to 2 zooms us out. That might be the one we have to go with. And then 1 to 1's too close. Let's see if we have another one. We have 2 to 3. We should have a 3 to 2. Oh, no, we don't. Yeah, we do. So somewhere in your list, it's probably in an odd spot, but you'll see a 3 to 2. Okay, 3 to 2 is no good. I apologize. We will use 3 to 2 later. Let's stick with 2 to 3. Oh, I'm sorry. That was not zoomed out far enough. We're going to stick with 1 to 2. As a scale, the part does look a little bit small on screen, but it's what's going to allow us to show everything. So, it's what it is. Now I want to get rid of anything in that space or move it away that I don't want to show up in a print. So this image is in the way, and so are these lines that I use to copy off of. So take a second to move things out of the way. Easiest way to do that is double click out, go to model space, and just highlight any of those items and just move them to the side. Now, once back in your layout, just to verify that this is not going to show up, like I said, that's on a locked layer, and that locked layer is set to not print. But I'm going to go to my plot settings. So if you type PLOT or PLO, it'll jump to plot settings. This is a window that pops up every time, and so to prevent this from popping up, we're not going to use batch plot. So we always want to continue to plot a single sheet. Make sure you select the option for do not show me this again, and then hit continue plot single sheet, and you won't find that anymore. You are going to see this every time. I'm sorry for that. That's the old printer name. Just hit OK here. Let's make sure to select our printer, which is App Server CAD. And then we want to switch over to GHS plot. If you were not here when we added the GHS plot, please add a friend, ask a friend, on how to add that. They may or may not remember. If I get time, I will have added another video on how to add GHS plot. Okay, the paper size, letter, those are the two things that you should have to change, and that's it. Everything else should be set. So if we hit preview, that line is gone. You'll also notice that you should be able to see hidden versus visible line types. If you zoom in, right now mine are a little bit small, but I am able to see some slight dashes, but we'll have to change that using our line type scale. So the preview looks good, so I will hit the red X in the upper left, close the preview, but because it looks good and I want to save that, we're going to hit apply to layout, and that will be set for the rest of this file from here on out. So now, from now on, when you go to print, you can just go Control P or plot and then hit OK. All right, now I don't want to hit OK, otherwise it will print. I'm just going to hit cancel right now. Before we go much further, let's check that line type scale. So it looks like it did in the preview. To change it, we're going to, from this view, that's the best way to see it. If I go to my model, sometimes the scale here looks different than in paper space. So I always tell students, change line type scale in the paper space to get it to show correctly. So, well, we actually usually do it the first time in model space, but I believe we can do it from either one. Just make sure you double click inside the view and then type LTS for line type scale and hit enter. For anything metric, a good scale factor to start with is 10 or 15. So I'm going to try 10, hit enter. Okay, my line types are looking pretty good, but my center lines are not showing up. So, and I accidentally zoomed in before I was locked. Let's pause here, reset your scale if you did the same as me. So we'll set it back to 1 to 2. And as centering my parts, I'm going to re-lock my, now I'm going to not re-lock, I'm going to lock my viewport. And this is something new that wasn't happening in the past. The reason I'm not able to lock my viewport is because the viewport itself is locked. So hit the drop down up here, and under viewports where it says lock or unlock a layer, unlock the layer. That's not going to affect the print of this line, I don't think. I'm going to double check in a second. But unlock that viewport layer and then select, double click inside the viewport again. This time you can hit the lock. And now as we go to move or zoom in and out while in the viewport, our paper space is going to move with us, even though my cursor is restricted to the viewport. Okay, so my line type scale, well, it's showing up. Center lines are not. Hidden lines only have 2 dashes on my smallest distance. So we want center lines to have a minimum of 3 dashes. So I'm going to try another line type scale. It's going to have to be a little bit less than 10. I'm trying 8. 8 doesn't work. I'm going to hit enter twice and try 7. Nope, still no good. Let's try 5. Line type scale 5. Okay. Oh, I was hitting enter twice and I shouldn't have. Maybe 8 does work. No. Looks like 5's the one. So for this particular drawing, let's use a line type scale of 5, just so that our hidden lines show correctly. Again, we're zoomed out a little bit, but that's fine. Before we leave paper space, let's double click here and add the new scale. This is going to be 1 to 2. So just swap the X's. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my model space and show you how to add dimensions to your part. And it was noted to me by one of the students in 7th hour recently that I screwed this one up. Thank you. So I'm going to turn that into a hidden line because I made a mistake. That should be hidden from our perspective. So when we're looking at the front, we don't see that back face. Not behind the neck anyway. Right here, it is a visible line, but as soon as we, until we get past this radius, it is hidden. Excuse me. All right, so how do we add dimensions? Like we have in the past, this scale has to match to show the dimensions in the paper space. So I need to change this to 1 to 2. Now that that scale is set to 1 to 2, I want to also change my layer to be dimension layer. So I have nothing selected when I'm doing this, which is important. If you had anything highlighted, then it would just change that highlighted item. All right, I'm going to kind of move this over temporarily so we can see some of these dimensions, and then we'll add dimensions one at a time. I like to also highlight or cross these off as I go. So usually having this as a piece of paper in front of me is helpful. Because I don't have paper today, I'm just going to use the dimension layer and just make, I'm going to make a donut. So donut is actually a command in AutoCAD, donut. And what a donut is going to do is allow you to just make a dot or make a donut. So inside diameter, if I want it to be a dot, it's going to be 0. If I leave it as 0.5, you'll see it has a small hole in it. Outside diameter of my donut, I'm going to put as, let's say, 6. And then as I place my donut, you'll see I do have a little hole on the inside, but it actually just makes a loop with 2 diameters. This was my inside diameter was 0.5, my outside was 6. As you select a donut, it looks kind of like a circle with its grips, but as you drag them, you can basically change the look of your donut. It's a really weird shape, but anyway. So I'm just going to copy that donut around to say whether or not I've placed a dimension. And this is basically a check system. So you want to start with, when you're dimensioning, you want to start with your overall dimensions, or you want to make sure you include them. But to get us started today, we're going to use our smallest dimensions. I always tell students, start with your overalls, but when you do that, you do have to end up moving them outward. So I'm going to talk about it today. In the future, we're going to start with them, and then I'll show you how to move them outward. But since this is your first time dimensioning this year, just follow along. Okay, first dimension I'm going to throw in, I'm going to start in my front view and show all the dimensions that appear to be in the front view from this image. So in this image, if you look at the text, you'll see the 100 millimeter dimension is headed in this direction. It is also parallel with all the lines, like this line and this line. It's parallel with all of these different lines. So we see those edges. Oh, not that one. We see those edges when we look from the right. So that 100 millimeter dimension would easily be shown in our right side view. We could also show it in the top view, but it shows really well in the right because it shows, well, it shows well in either one, but if you're unsure where to put it, just look to your isometric image, and 99% of the time, you can place it in the view that the text seems to align with. So when looking from the front view, I actually only see 2 pieces of text right off the bat that are showing some sizes. So I've got this 58 and this radius of 11. So I'm going to place those right away. D space for dimension. And if I hover on the line, I get a pick box. The other option is to click from endpoint to endpoint and then move down. Now, as we move out, see, this typically is offset by a specific amount to the first dimension and then a specific amount to the next dimension. We're not going to worry about that today because that changes as scale changes, but just kind of drag it out so that that number gets just past the center line. Then I'm going to hit space, and I'm going to hit space again to do another dimension. If I hover here, I can place this radius, and then I'm just going to click to leave it right there. I don't like that though, because we don't want that text just sitting inside. We also don't want to leave an arrowhead on the object or laying over the object if we can help it. So I'm going to try and grab the text and pull it out here. That is okay. It potentially might be in the way. I might have to move that to the other side, but for right now, that'll cover it. Okay, now I can choose to do the height of this object, my overall height in this view or this view. We'll get to that in a second. So I've placed 2 dimensions, so I'm going to copy this and just block them out. So this one's done and this one's done. And for the remainder of the video, I'm just going to go through, block out dimensions as I go, and place them on. So you can follow along with me. I'm going to try to talk a little bit less so I can focus and do it quicker, and less video for you to watch. Heading to my front view, I'm going to try to add some of these smaller dimensions. Starting from the back, we've got dimension here that is 11, or I'm sorry, 19. And there's actually a chain of dimensions here. The next one is 30. And right now my 19 and 30 are fitting fine, but the 30 isn't as visible because this arrowhead of the 19 is overlapping. So to get this text to stand out, let's see, what can I do? I can pull the 30 outside of the arrows, or I can pull the 19 outside the arrows. If I pull the 19 outside, it works, but there's a lot of space here. And actually, it doesn't. It doesn't help the 30. So one option we have, we do want to keep them in line, but one option you can do is select the dimension for 30. So escape and then click on the number. Head over to your properties, and under the text section of your properties, there's an option for a mask. So I'm going to find it. I think that's it. Yep, that does it. So when we select it, I selected background. Under text, for the fill color, I selected background, and what that'll do is just leave it so that the number 30 can't be overlapped by anything else. All right, so that'll work. You always want to keep the arrowheads in line. If it's a chain dimension, make sure they're not sitting off by a little bit like this. So highlight text, grab the grip, and just move it up. Keep this in the center. So if you accidentally took it off center, you can just quickly draw a line and then move this grip to the middle of that line and then delete the line. So we got our 19, our 30. Another dimension that's in that line is 11. And then we have an overall of 100. And we've got another 11 up here and an 11 down here. So we can show all of those. So start with my 11 millimeter dimensions. We get 11 from here to here. And make sure you don't get the wrong alignment. Move your mouse down to snap downward. Another 11 sitting here. And another 11 millimeters right here. Before I move on, I want to talk about anytime you dimension to a center line. So when dimensioning to a center line, we want to actually have the center line show in place of the dimension line. To do that, we're going to highlight our center lines and drag these two grips to the top of the dimension. And just make sure that they click right at the top of the dimension line. And they're there, but our dimensions are covering them. So individually, we have to click our dimensions. Sometimes we can do them both, but in this case, we have to do them individually because on the 30 millimeter dimension, we need both these lines to go away. On the 19, we just need this line to go away. So 30 millimeters, this line is, these are our extension lines. Go to your properties. Lines and arrows under extension line 1 and 2, we are going to just turn them off. Okay, I got it, but my 19 is still showing. So now select 19, and then extension line 1 and 2. As you hover here, you'll see which one it is. So in this case, my extension line 1 is the one I want to leave on, but my extension line 2 I need to turn off. And then you'll see your green line is the one that shows. So that's it for this case. And then if I want to move these dimensions up or down at this point, say I wanted to actually reposition them a little higher, it's a pain to do it and then have to move this, and I don't know where that position is anymore. I could draw a line, but to save myself all that grief, to move these together, I want to use a command that we haven't talked a lot about, and it's called stretch. So stretch is done with the S key, so S space, and as long as I highlight all of the grips that I know I want to have control of inside of this window. I want to have control of all these top grips as well as the grips for the text. Now I can hit enter and then click anywhere or somewhere specific if you want to, and then I can just move them together. In this case, it is important to make sure that ortho is turned on. So ortho is on now, and as I move, I can move them up and down together. So I just want them a little closer to the object. I don't really want these two arrowheads to cross, so that's good enough. All right, my last controlling dimension I wanted from this view was 100 millimeters overall to center. So from the same spot as 19 all the way up to this center line, I'm just going to pick that spot, place my 100, kind of so this line's close to the top of the 11, but I also want enough space so that if I were to draw a line between the top of the number 11 and 100, we'd have about an entire character width between the two numbers. So that's about a character width right now, or height. If I move that distance upward between 11 and 100, I want that much space. So I'm going to move this dimension above that line by one text height, I guess. All right, so that's spaced really well. Yeah, last thing I need to do on this dimension is adjust my center line, bring it to the top, and then select my extension line and turn this one off. Okay, so I'm going to need to blot out some dimensions here, make sure I cover all the ones I put in. So I've got my 11, turning ortho off for a second. All these sizes of 11 millimeters are done. Oh, I didn't get the 62. I'm just seeing that. So I got the 100, 30, 19. I didn't get the 81 either. So this is why we highlight, so that we don't miss them. So I need to put in dimension 81 and 62 in this view. And this view's already got a lot of dimensions. So I think I'm just gonna put the 62 in this view. But the 81 can go here. So 81 at the bottom. Use your cursor to kind of line these up. So, and actually I can even snap over here, but I do want this to come straight down and be in line. So it looks like my first row dimensions have the same distance. Then to get my 62, you want this dimension to show all dimensions. You ideally want to show between views. But this one's important because this 62 exists in this view, and it also exists in this view. What you don't want to do is dimension from one view to the other view. Like, that's right, it's 62 from the bottom to the top, but you want to keep your dimensions in one view. So keep that over here. My problem is I don't have a ton of space between views, so like I had said, we might have to. I'm going to move this radius of 11 to the other side. So I'm just going to erase this one, and then redo that dimension on this side, and then pull that radius of 11 out here. All right, so covered on 81 and 62. These last few dimensions, whenever you have a radius or diameter, you want to make sure that you show those dimensions where you see the hole or you see the arc. And then this one, the position of 29, we need to show that as well in the top view because that's where we're going to see its position. And because of that, it really would have ideally been better to put these two dimensions also in my top view. I'm not going to make you change that now, but it is better practice to put the 30 and the 19 in the top instead. Oh, we'll cover best practices more in the next one. So last couple dimensions, we're going to put a diameter out. Oh crap, I didn't trim that circle. So this should actually be radius. So I'm going to trim this and this. Excuse me. So dimension again. Now that I'm showing an arc, it's going to automatically default to radius. With a circle, this will default to diameter. And I'm just going to put both of these here. To cover my diameters, though, we do have a note that says that there are 3 holes with a 3x and then a space. So add that 3x and a space by double-clicking. And then you can use your, if you need to add a note to the end, you can use your arrow key to go to the right. We want to put the note before. So it's going to be 3 times, whoops, that's S. 3 times diameter of 11. And then just click out to get off of it. One thing when dimensioning to circles or arcs, if there is a center mark, and 99% of the time there is, you don't want to put that dimension like this so that it's in line with the center mark. That detracts from the center mark symbol. Make sure they're sitting at an angle. Okay, we have one more dimension, a diameter, or sorry, this distance of 29, and we could show that in the front, which is beneficial because it shows it between this view and the next. It would show a little bit better at the back. It could also be shown from here to this side. We have the 58 here. We kind of want to see 58 and 19 together if possible. So this one's a little harder to decide where to put it. It can go in either of these views. I'm going to move my dimensions just to the side and put the 19 between views. Or sorry, 29 between views. I think this works. If I just highlight these and use mirror, I believe it will not reverse my text. And I can just switch them. Yep, so swap them to the other side. Text is still showing right. I can delete these. And then I can put the 19 from here over to here. Make sure you're hitting the end point of this between the fillet and the line, or the radius and the line, and then you just pull straight out to make it snap. And then, like we did before, we want to extend that center line to go to the end here. And now I need to turn this extension line off. Looks like it's extension line 1 for me. And 1 and 2, it always depends on which one you click first. So if you can remember which one you clicked first, that'll help you in turning extension lines off. Alright, that is going to cover dimensioning, I believe. Let me copy these over onto copy. So we got the 29, we got the diameter and the radius. I don't see any other dimensions, but there is one thing missing here, and that is this note. So notes are important parts of drawings. This note says fillets and rounds, radius of 3. So we need to put that in because it is not listed as a dimension. If it was not a note, you would see this dimension all over the place, and there's a lot of them. So rather than copying this dimension from arc to arc to arc and just placing it everywhere, what you do is add a note to detail all of your minor fillets or round corners. And really what that is that's for user experience. It's for your hands so you don't get cut. It's also a lot of times just part of a casting. In this case, it's just part of the casting. But let's add that note. Usually those notes exist in the bottom right of a drawing. So we're just going to, we do this one of two ways. We can snag a piece of our text, or we can use the letter A for text. I believe this works. I'm just going to make a small window underneath this view and copy what it says there, fillets and rounds R3. And when you are using caps lock, this is not 100% mandatory, but it is very good practice to add a double space between words because it reads so much better. So right now, because it's all capitals, these words kind of run together. Best practice is to just add an extra space when you're in caps, and we're always in caps in CAD. So click out and look at the size of that. That's not good. So rather than fighting with scale and trying to get the size to match this 1:2 scale, we're going to use a different option, which is just copying out of a dimension. So good that we saw how not to do it. Anyway, grab any piece, any dimension that's going horizontal. Let's grab it, copy it, and let's just pull it down. And we're going to then click on it again and hit the X key for explode. And now that we exploded it, every piece of geometry here is editable. So we're just going to get rid of all the arrows and lines. And now that text is by itself. Double click it and you can edit it. So I'm going to just retype that. All space space fillets, space space, and space space rounds, space space R3. It looks like this is also the same kind of text, so you can grab this, and if you wanted to do double line like that, it kind of helps the note stand out, or you can just keep it as a single line. I'm fine with either, and that could go right under this view, but it is a note that's separate, that's for everything, so I'm just going to kind of place it here, and I'm going to go and see how it looks in Paperspace before I decide where I want it. So this donut can go away. This view can go back to the right. I've got everything. I'm going to go check on my paper. So layout 1, things look pretty good. Typically these notes end up going right next to the title block. A lot of times either by the metric symbol or down here. So in my classes I usually tell students just put it down by the GPAW. So let's double click inside and let's take this note. I'm just going to use the move command. Just kind of space it off and put that as a note. I am ready to print, I believe. Make sure you're saving often. I should have saved a couple times in this, but save if you haven't. This is an edit. I finished this drawing and forgot about that little guy right there. As I was making the video, I was flying through and adding these to say, yeah, you don't want to see these all over the screen. So, before you print, get rid of this thing. Okay, back to it. And then we'll just go to either Control P or plot. Hit the preview, make sure you like the way that looks. You're going to see it now in black and white. Double check before printing as well that your hidden lines and center lines all show with gaps. To me this looks good, so I am ready to print. I'm going to hit enter, and that is, I'm going to hit enter one more time or hit OK, and that is sending to the printer now. Alright, so this drawing I do want you to print and turn in. You'll be printing this while I'm out of the class. I'm not going to have you print every one, but I do want to be able to check to see your work on the others. So I do want you to try to get through these different problems. We got 5 days, so I'm going to try to give you 3 problems, I think. If you don't get through the end of the third one, that's fine, but you definitely have enough time to get all of the drawing portion done, maybe not all the dimensioning. Alright, thank you guys for your time. And if this video took you 2 days, that is perfectly okay. The next ones are going to be much shorter.